Difference. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's so good to be here, and I am going to talk about what we will leave behind. Just recently, about a few months ago, two perfect strangers who picked up a copy of my book, read it from cover to cover, found my contact address and wrote to me and say, hey, I would like to spend a few weeks with you in Sabah, and I want to see what you do. And so I said, okay, I'll pick you up from the airport and you will shadow me and you'll go into the interiors. And we spent about 4 days together. It was two beautiful, strong women, and we had a lot of meals together. And just before I sent them off to the airport, this was what they said to me in their own words. I quit my full-time job, and I took this trip because I wanted a sabbatical in search for purpose in my life. And these two were career women who had made it to the ranks, but they decided to leave it all behind. And sometimes, you see, life does not pass us by. But if we walk too fast, we pass life by. And this search for purpose really started with a travel trip that I made when I was 18 years old. And if you remember this scene, it was September 11 of 2001, and I was 18 years old, and I had made my first solo trip out to New York City, and not to the glitz and glamour of the Big Apple, but I was living in Manhattan, not Manhattan, but the Bronx area, and I was doing an internship there for 4 months, working with ghetto children, and living amongst children who have really broken and dysfunctional families whose moms are prostitutes and they would sell their bodies, and whose fathers are drug addicts, and their children are all left behind. And what I did in this internship was to run extracurricular activities after school for these children. But this particular event happened a week after I arrived in New York, and we were having a briefing in a room much smaller than this, and somebody ran into the room and said, hey, turn on the TV, switch it on, there's something happening in New York. And we switched on the TV, and this was what we saw. Actually, it was less of what we saw. We only saw one tower that was burning up. So all of us, about 20 of us, packed up everything, and we ran up to the rooftop, and there in clear sight was the two towers. One was burning and one was still intact. And within minutes of just staring at the two towers, I saw the second plane come in and crash into the tower. And literally within minutes, the two towers came crumbling down. And if you've been to the beach before, it's like building a sandcastle and taking your fist and pounding it, and there goes nothing. You don't see anything at all. And there, in the moment of silence, the world stood still. And some people ask me, how do you process that? I can't process that, because it took time for me to think, and it took time for me to digest what had actually happened, and to listen to news, to see the magnitude of what happened. And that got me thinking about two things. These two words called mortality and impact. And mortality, some of us are given a few minutes to live in life, some of us a few days, some of us, just like any regular person, would live up to 60, 70 years old. But whatever time that we have on earth, we have this responsibility to live it out. And that comes to my second word, called impact. When we play out our responsibility on earth, we need to leave something positive behind. And it got me thinking about this word legacy, and I think people often think about legacy when they're on their deathbed, right? Or they're given, you go to a doctor and you're given a diagnosis that allows you to live only, you've got only 6 months to live, and then you start thinking, oh my gosh, what have I not done? I should travel the world, I should do this and I should do that. But I just want to challenge us, and I challenge myself as well, to constantly think about this word legacy and what we will leave behind, because there is a huge difference between eulogies and resumes. And we work all our lives to pack up our resumes with accolades and achievements and more job opportunities and greater things. But then most of what happens or most of what is written in our resumes don't get spoken about when people talk about us after we are gone in our eulogies. And really, when we think about legacy, it helps us it reminds us about death, but that's not necessarily a bad thing because death informs life and it helps us to think about what's important in life, and therefore it gives us more information to make decisions that are important and significant, the kind of life that we want to live and the kind of world that we want to live in. Spider-Man, had this quote that says, "With great power comes great responsibility." But I think all of us have great privilege, and this privilege comes with the breath that we breathe. It's not where we're born in. It's not the kind of family that we're born in. It's not the education that we're given. But I think the greatest privilege is to have breath within us, and that's life. And with this privilege comes great responsibility. So what do we do with that? And so I want to share with you my story. It's largely about travel, but it's also largely about life itself. In 2014, and as I share my story, I just want to leave with you 3 points. The first point is it takes courage to let go of the familiar and to embrace the new. I think all of us need to grow from one level of courage to the next level of courage. So in 2014, my husband and I, together with our 1-year-old son, did something very crazy, and it didn't make sense to some people, but it made a lot of sense to us because we found purpose. So we quit our full-time jobs, professional jobs, and I had a dream job, as a full-time consultant who worked in the travel industry, and I got to travel the world through my job and to go to places where I would probably never be able to, or I wouldn't want to pay for, but I was given that opportunity to do so, and so letting go of that job was quite difficult. But again, we found purpose. So we quit our full-time jobs, packed up our bags, and we left for Cambodia. And in Cambodia, we built schools for children, and we lived in this small countryside called Battambang. It's 5 hours away from Phnom Penh. We had cows as neighbors. We had about 50 chickens in our compound, and there you see my son picking up a chicken without hesitation whatsoever. It was like his pet. We didn't have a dog, but we had chickens around, and we went around in motorbikes, and that was our only mode of transport. And because I can't ride a bike, so I can only ride pillion, I would have a bicycle. So, but I'm not like Jin, who can cycle everywhere. I just like flat roads. I don't like steep, hilly roads. So that was our mode of transport. And as a family, we journeyed in Cambodia, and there you see under the tree that was a school or a community, a gathering, and that was before the community centers or the schools/community centers were built. And it gave us a lot of learnings. And in Cambodia, we spent 2 years there, and it gave us an opportunity for us to teach our child values that you would usually talk about and you would usually read about in children's books, like how to love someone and how to be polite and kind and thoughtful. But we got that opportunity to really give him that experience so that he can be part of that value system that we believe in as well. And so that was Seth, my child, my son, during one of the Christmas programs, and we were packing Christmas gifts, and we spent the whole night packing hundreds of little packets, and he stayed up with us as well with some volunteers. And the next morning, we took all those packets. We had a Christmas program for the children, and then we gave out all the gifts. And I want to tell you a little story also about this journey that we can bring our children along with us, or the people closest to us along with us. When he was 2 years old, I asked him, I said, he had just celebrated his 2-year-old birthday party. We had a little small gathering there, and so people brought gifts, different kinds of gifts. And our parents flew in also from KL, and they brought bigger gifts. Of course, it's their first grandson. And then after the whole party, he literally had a whole bag of gifts with him. And I said, look, Seth, you have been to the villages. And he was 2 years old. And I asked him, I said, Seth, you have so many gifts with you. Do you think you can give it away? Maybe you can choose a few gifts and you can give it away. Because I don't think we can bring all of that back to Malaysia. And, I don't want to buy extra luggage for that. And I really didn't know whether he would understand that or not. So he went to sleep that night. He didn't give me an answer, and I didn't push him for it. The next morning when he woke up, he almost had a revelation, and he said, he went to that bag of gifts, he took out a few gifts, and he said, look, Mom, in broken English, and what a 2-year-old can say, Mom, this is for children. And he had selected some gifts on his own accord to give it to the children. And then and there, I knew that this journey is not just about myself, but I saw for myself with my own eyes that the seeds that I had planted, which I could not see, I was beginning to see the fruits of it. And so as we take steps of courage, I think the inspiration has a ripple effect on other people, on the people around us. And so this is some pictures of the literacy centers that we built, and we built it from scratch. And we had in mind in that 2 years to actually build 2 literacy centers. But lo and behold, we raised enough money to build 4 literacy centers. And I think one of the greatest lessons is that when we put ourselves out there, we always get something back. The second lesson that I want to leave with you is that when we think about this word legacy, don't ever lose your sense of wonder and go wonder. And that's I think very pertinent to the topic that we're talking here about travel, because as we travel and as we step out of our comfort zone, not just traveling is not just buying a ticket and going somewhere else. I think traveling is really stepping out of your comfort zone and realizing that, hey, this is my comfort zone, and as we step out of it, that's traveling, because it's a journey that we take on the inside, and that we learn more about ourselves and we learn more about other people as well. And this word wonder, I think, as we grow older in life, some of us tend to shed a lot of our childlikeness, but there is great joy in keeping that childlikeness and that curiosity and that sense of wonder that, hey, look, there's always something new out there. Even if I walk the streets of Penang, and I've been on the streets of Penang for how many umpteen times, but there's always something new. There's always a new person that we can meet and we can converse with. And so I just want to share with you some pictures of the travels that we've done. And as we see the world, we have a greater appreciation for life, a greater appreciation for nature and the environment around us. And so this was taken in India. The tigers were in India, the lions and the elephants were in South Africa. But gosh, what a great world we have, and what awesome nature do we have, and to be surrounded and to be part of that, it's such a gift. And then a part of travel is also really just connecting with the people. So the next time, I think, the challenge to us is that the next time we go on a travel trip, connect with the local people, see things through their eyes. And as we do, I think something happens from within us as well. That's a picture of some children in Africa, and I went to visit a school in Africa, and I saw how different education system works in Africa, and how different, not necessarily blessed we are in Malaysia, but how different it is, and that we learn and we have different environments of learning as well. And that picture with that little girl and that dog looking at her food, that's really a priceless picture, because I saw that when I was walking the streets of Vietnam. And I saw that poverty was really before us, and when we see the world, I think we shouldn't lose the power of what moves us from within, because especially as women, when we see things, something happens from within, and different things move different people. And so when I saw that, it moved me, because I am generally just drawn to people in need. And so when I saw that girl share, literally seconds before that, that dog was almost sharing that bowl of rice with her, and then she grabbed it before the dog did, and she ate it up before the dog did. But the need is out there, and then when we think about the needs that are around there, we think about, what can I do to be part of that solution? And then that boy in Sri Lanka. An NGO had gone in to give them electronic tablets to study, and they were so happy because people actually cared for them in this remote part of Sri Lanka. And adventure, never lose your sense of wonder, and in that, always seek out adventure, push your limits, go the extra mile. I love, some of the women here love to hike, and when I'm always on a hiking trip, it always has an impact on me. When I'm walking, I'm always thinking about life, like, this is a such a message about life as we reach the mountaintop. It's not an easy thing to do when we reach the mountaintop, but it's such a good reflection of life, isn't it? That we have ups and downs, and that picture with my husband and I, that was our latest trip to Rinjani. I would say this, that as parents, if you can't bring your children physically with you, bring their hashtags with you, so they go with you everywhere. That the last bottom picture was us, was actually my husband and I. We skydived in New Zealand. But adventure, what it does is that it stretches us, and it puts us in a place where we learn more about ourselves and our limitations, what we can do and what we can't do, and it helps us to expand ourselves. And finally, take your children with you on trips, because there's just not a right or a wrong time to travel, and as we take our children with us, we give them that sense of adventure, we give them that taste of adventure. And these three pictures is of a trip that we went to along the Trans-Siberian railway journey, where we entered into China, and then we snaked our way into Mongolia and ended up in Russia, St. Petersburg, before we took a plane back. But my son was so fascinated with trains, and we were there for Nadam Festival as well, and to see the culture there, wrestling and arrow shooting, and it was just a great experience. And then that picture of my husband and my son climbing up the Great Wall, really there is nothing that we can't do. We just have to push ourselves. And then the third point that I would like to leave with you is, this thing about legacy is that all of us have the power and all of us have the potential to give back. And miracles on earth actually happen when someone says, okay, I'm willing to be that human conduit, and I'm willing to stand in the gap, and I'm willing to be part of the solution. So just after we finished our stint in Cambodia, we had built 4 schools, we had trained a lot of teachers, and we had raised funds enough to pay the salaries of the teachers. We ran a volunteer program, and we had over 100 volunteers. We knew it was time to go, and we knew our time was up, and it was time to go. And we thought, we'll come back to KL, and we'll resume our full-time jobs. Yay! We've done two years in Cambodia, but it wasn't enough. There was a nagging feeling within us, and that was where some doors open for us to go to Sabah and be part of a movement or a project that was started by Starfish Foundation, and we're working in partnership with them where we build hostels for children who don't have access to local school education. So these hostels are set up next to government schools, and these children can walk to schools. Otherwise, they would have to walk 7 to sometimes 50 kilometers to schools. To a local school. It all came together, and what really stood up for us was that the area that we work with in Sabah, the rural area, according to a World Bank report, 40% of the poorest Malaysians live there. And in Cambodia, we used to work with communities or people who earn US $1 a day. But in Sabah, the people that we work with earn sometimes as little as 1 to 2 ringgit a day. And these are the people that we work with. But we find it such a privilege to be able to be part of their lives. And so we bring our family with us. And these are just some pictures of the hostels that we build. And it is such a great privilege to have life and to act out their responsibility and to leave this legacy behind, because when we think about life, it's not just about us, but it's about a world greater than us. And really leaving a legacy is not rocket science at all. You don't need a scientist to tell you what to do. It takes intentional and conscious effort to realize that we have gifts and we have talents and we need to use it for a greater good. But when we stop doing that and we live our lives only for ourselves, we shrink back into a world and we lose sight and we lose vision of living a life beyond our own lifetime. So I challenge you to live a life that is worth living for and that really counts, so that you and I can leave a legacy that people can talk about. Thank you very much.